So welcome to the Kenai Peninsula Historical Association fall meeting. Oh, yes. Okay. My name is Shannon Kovac and I'm the president of the Historical Association. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. And first off, we're just going to do an introduction of our officers. I'm Shannon Kovac and I'm from Stewart, Resurrection Day Historical Society. Nyman from Cooper Landing is our vice, and I don't think he's here today. Mona Painter from Cooper Landing is our secretary. And Carmen Steffel is our treasurer.
From Solana.
Right. Okay. So first up is the approval of our May 6, 2023 minutes. And those went out to everybody via emails. Most people have already read them. If you haven't and you want a copy, Mona has them over there at the table. Is there anybody that needs to take a look before we approve?
Move to approve.
Move to approve. Okay. We do have some, Shauna has some edits, which I'm going to give to Mona. Does anybody else have any edits, additions, deletions? Okay, but I'm going to give Mona these edits.
Which it's not, it's mostly grammatical and they're someone's names.
All right.
I'm sorry,
Well, you make a counter move about my edits.
You want to read your edits?
I don't have the copy with me. I can definitely do that.
So under the treasure, these are the corrections. Under the treasurer's report, I'll just read the entire sentence. Dale Bagley seconded and the motion was passed by unanimous consent. Insert the word and. And then under our society reports, the sentence was edited. It was the popular Then and Now series. It is now the Soldotna Society has a popular Then and Now series on Facebook.
Item 6.
Yeah, under item 6. The next was under the guest speaker section of Rachel Mason. In a second paragraph, second line. What were the original sentence was Shauna Lashbach has access to local history films. And it should read Shauna Lashbach has access to some local history. And then on the last page under, let's see, beneath the sentence read, the meeting was adjourned for lunch and the guest speaker was Adam Dunstan, assistant professor of anthropology at the Kenai Peninsula College. And instead of Dunstan, it's Dunstan, so it's just a spelling. No. Oh, and also in the little notice under the photograph, we added Paula Butte's name to the people that are in the photograph. Sound good, Shauna? Okay. So we had a motion to approve. Did we have a second? Second. Colleen? Colleen is second.
Colleen second.
So all in favor? Opposed? Nobody. That's great. So motion passes. So under President's report, we're having an abbreviated business meeting today so that everybody will have time to get the different historical societies will have time to present a little bit longer than usual because we have guests here at the Alaska Historical Society. And wanted to thank the Alaska Historical Society for inviting us to join them in this joint conference, which has been wonderful. And also, our local historical societies have sponsored the coffee breaks. And so they all need a big round of applause for that. I think they've done a great job. And also we have a local committee working here to help coordinate this conference. And they have done a wonderful job. And the local committee was headed up by Sharon Fisher. And then Jen Wells is a member, Carmen Stuffel, Brent Johnson. So thank you all. So we're ready for our treasury report.
Oh, we are already.
We are.
Is it gonna be on the screen or everybody has their copy?
It's not on the screen.
Nothing thrilling and exciting with KPHA Association financial report since May, since I took it over, other than KPHA was reimbursed for the brochures they purchased and had printed that for the societies. Each society was could purchase these to give out at their museums, sharing, you know, directing everybody to different societies and stuff. So Soldada and Resurrection Bay,
Yes.
were the two that purchased those. We were reimbursed for that, and then also Shannon thought it was important that KPHA actually had a copy of the two books that they printed, which are snapshots of statehood and the road we've traveled. So those are so that's shown in the treasurer's report, purchasing those. So make sure we have a copy of those, especially the blue book is getting harder and harder to find. So, but we have a plan. Other than that, should I tell you, do you need to know the amounts of money we have? Or you can read that. Hasn't changed much since May. Yeah, you can read it. So other than that, a big shout out to Soldotna Historical Society too for purchasing the Kaladi Brothers coffee for y'all. Any questions or comments or things, something I can do better or?
I think you should.
Good, well, that's pretty simple, so, thank you.
Okay, Chris, I'm gonna put you on the spot. We did introduction. This is Chris Nyman from Cooper Landing. He's our vice.
I finally learned how to find this place.
You made it. That's important.
And I'm in charge of the coffee bar, and so I brought some snacks for the coffee bar.
Excellent. Okay, sounds good. So, next up are the Historical Society reports. We'll go right into those. That's gonna be the fun part. And I'm gonna start off with a brief history of Kenai Peninsula Historical Association. And this year, if anybody didn't know this already, this is our 50th anniversary. And this is a pretty exciting time to be able to host this conference. So in 1972, the Kenai Historical Society, they held a borough-wide meeting at Fort Kenai. And they invited all the historical societies on the peninsula, as well as different organizations and interested people that had the same agenda where everybody is interested in preserving the Kenai's past. And at this meeting, the people that came, the different societies, they shared their accomplishments and what the things, their dreams about how to preserve the history. And they all agreed that if they worked together cooperatively under an umbrella historical association, that they could multiply their efforts and get the word out in a better way. Oh, I'm doing what people were doing yesterday. Sorry. No, it's okay.
It's because I didn't click.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Ready? Awesome. Okay. So after this meeting, the We Care Committee was formed, and Jenny Peterson of Kenai was the chair for this committee, and the main purpose was to organize this large peninsula-wide association. And so they worked on putting together a constitution with representatives from all the different communities on the peninsula. And a year later, in 1973, in Homer, the Homer Society of Natural History hosted another meeting, and they voted on this constitution, they approved it, and then they elected their first officers. And Margaret Anderson of Homer was the first president. Edwina Copeland of Seward was the vice. And Francis Thompson of Homer was the secretary treasurer. And since that time, the association has been meeting twice a year, with the annual meeting being held in the spring. And membership is open to any historical society, organization, or individual that meets our mission. You know, we believe in our mission of preserving municipal heritage. These historical societies are our current historical societies. But we've had many others that have kind of come and gone over the years. I just want to give a shout out to them as well for now. The Nilfic Historical Society, Homer Society of Natural History, the East Portlands Historical Society, the Alaska Nelly Historical Society. And then we were also different communities like Anchor Point and Sterling were represented by different individuals. So we're always looking for new members and, getting the word out. If you know somebody else who might be interested in joining, please let us know. Over the years, KPHA has worked on a number of big projects. All the members got together to join efforts. Early on, they produced a cookbook called the Kenai Peninsula's Favorite Recipes. And the proceeds from the first and second edition of this cookbook went to produce another book called Alaska Kenai Peninsula, The Road We've Traveled. And this book incorporated Lois Hudson Allen's 1946 book, Alaska Kenai Peninsula. So besides incorporating this book, they also updated all the information from the different societies, or not the different societies, but the different communities. And then again, for Alaska's 50th anniversary, the KPHA produced another book, and this was titled Snapshots at Statehood. And it highlighted the different borough communities as they were in 1959. And if anybody's interested, we have that book for sale in the book room for $15. So what about the next 50 years? We definitely need to make a move into the digital age. We are scanning our records, but we so far have no website. So I think that's next on our agenda. And so I'll be looking for content suggestions from our members on what they'd like to see in a website so that we can move on. And then also, continuing to grow our membership is really important to everybody. So at our meetings, each historical society is always asked to give an update. And so today we're going to start with Cooper Landing, and they will give you a little bit update what's been going on with them and hopefully how their historical society came to be.
Well, I know we were supposed to make this not more than 10 minutes and I haven't checked it over, so give me a high sign.
Oh,
Okay, so I just wanted to say that the Historical Society in Cooper Landing was started in 1998 at a meeting in my house. And the museum was established in 2003. Next.
No? At the Stewart Company.
Oh. Okay. For those of you who haven't been there, and I'm sure most of you have anyway, these are just pictures of some of the buildings. We have 3 buildings. Our old schoolhouse, the old post office and store, and a building that we used to house our treasure sales. And then the other building that's on the site is the chamber. Chamber building for people, for visitors, with information in there. Okay, and then we just recently had this covered. This old cat is a 1928 cat that was used to help build the first road from Seward to Cooper Landing. And we got this from the family of the man that had the Brown Bear gun shop and museum. And I believe David Thornton, if I'm remembering right offhand. And so two of our wonderful volunteers, Dave Westerman and Don Barber, built the cover for the good old cat. Okay, and this is another outside exhibit that we have, and this is a Slavic history that came through us, to us through some people in Moose Pass. It came from Montague Island and over 400 years old, and we have markers there. And Dave Westerman is refinishing this, and he's been counting rings, and he's going to put a ring, a little tag. Well, not by the year, I can't remember if he's doing it and how many years, it may be 100 at a time, but anyway, he's adding to that. This is another one of our outdoor exhibits. Okay, and you can see we're located right on the Kenai River. So we have, are visited by fishermen often who park in the parking lot there and go around either side of the old post office. And that's one of the signs that were recently installed that tells a lot about the schoolhouse there, which was brought to Cooper Landing in 1955 and was used as a school or as one of the school buildings until 2003. And this is just showing the front of the museum. And this is the other sign. And that's Jacqueline's old store, Jack built the store about 1925. And then Debbie Fuller was postmaster for almost 30 years. And so she had the store and the adjacent cabin, which was an old cabin in North Kenai, taken apart and brought to the site as a grocery store. We had asked Katie Feidinger to do one of her wonderful murals that she does, that she burns into wood. And so we have a separate covering for that. And it shows the end of Kenai Lake and all the way to Ski Lac Lake. And people like to stop and have their pictures taken there, take pictures of this mural. We had wonderful young people there at the museum this summer. On Wednesdays, the Cooper Landing Youth Group and their leader took over the museum and were docents and also helped with the flower bed there. And they painted rocks with the names of the plants on it. And we've always been told you have to get younger people interested, and we're so fortunate to have these young people here from the grade school in Cooper Landing, well, grade school, high school, and they want to come back next year. And we have a project already that somebody, since I've been here, has suggested to me. These are the two guys that I mentioned, Dave Westerman and Don Barber. They re-roofed the old school, the old post office store. We wanted to keep it as much like it was when we originally got it as possible. However, the paper roof didn't stand up to the winds, and we were getting a lot leakage inside. So we decided to go the practical route to save the things that we were keeping. Jacqueline built a store, as I said, about 1925, and Betty Fuller's parents bought that area with his store in it, and that's where she had the post office for almost 30 years. And Jack and his family, his brother, came to Cooper Landing in 1910. And he lived there until he had to go to the Pioneers Home in Sitka. And he was the first person that I talked to about history and got really interested. And I found out that some of the early settlers there, you were really interested in the history. They were so generous with pictures and papers and letters. And Jack was my first historic friend. And this is how the old post office was moved down the highway to the side. It was about 600 feet downstream, down the Sterling Highway. And Keith Freeman and Nick Vanderhoff skidded it down there. And this is a picture of Betty working in the post office when we still had general delivery. And Rob there, who did a lot of the work after we got the buildings moved there. And this is our big display. This was a bear that the school children worked on from October to May till the night before we opened the museum. And it's a 20-year-old, they judged by a 20-year-old bear that was actually hit by a pickup truck in the Soldana area. And the teacher at that time, Cheryl Sotelo, was such a wonderful woman, and she had put a application into Fish and Game in case this happened with an adult brown bear. But yeah, go ahead to the next one. Because there's Cheryl standing there on the left, and this is at the opening. And the kids are doing a bear program for everybody that came out. Okay, and this is one of our docents, earlier docents, and you can see that we kept the blackboard there inside the museum in the old schoolhouse. And these are just, we have so many exhibits in 2 buildings that these are just some of the things that we've been given by local people. This 8-foot tall photograph is another one of the pictures or the exhibits that people really enjoy. And I like to ask them to show me on that picture where we are there in the museum. And I give them a cookbook, if they can guess. But it's at an oblique angle, I was told. And so it's kind of hard to picture where we are. Do you know where we are? Where the museum is? Well, it's about halfway through, not quite. We have interesting people that come and visit us, and I'm so glad to see somebody actually show me how to use them. What they call an Eskimo yo-yo. And there's Dave. Dave donated, he worked for Fish and Game, and he donated a sonar outfit that was used to count the salmon going up into Lower and Upper Russian. And we had that one beautiful on the tan moose hide. And Helen Gwynn was a wonderful benefactor during her lifetime and afterwards. And so we have a lot of Gwynn's Lodge, Gwynn's Cafe stuff around, and here she is with Mary Ford. And in the foreground there is a white phosphor that she donated, among so many other things. This is just an old picture I put in there when that showed some of the early buildings, and the Ritterford School and so forth. And that's just some bridge pictures. The original bridge that crossed where the post office was, Jack's store. And then after it moved in 1951, and after the earthquake, and then that's the temporary Greeley Bridge. Another bridge was, okay, the Tristing Bridge. A romance was carried on in this covered bridge, which was torn down in 1955. And mining equipment location sign. And inside of the Jacksonville store. And we like to have school kids visit us. We have kids we just had a group from Eagle River. Okay, next. And we're having a big open house at Christmas time, the second Saturday in December, everybody's welcome. People sit down and look at, we have a lot of reading material. People sit down and look at it when they have time. And the Christmas tree, we always have the Christmas tree. So happy New Year 2024.
I'm Diane Altice for the Hope and Sunrise Historical Society. I've lived in Hope for 40 years. I've been a member of the society for 30 years. I was on the board for 20 years. I'm no longer on the board. But last week I was asked to do a presentation here. And I threw this together in 2 days. And if you have trouble hearing me, give me a little indication and I'll speak
Stand
up.
right over here. Where's the computer? Yep. There you go. And then next slide.
Just keep pointing it again. If you have more things on that slide, they'll pop up.
Oh, well, that's the wrong slide. That's like slide number 7. The next one should be Hope and Sunrise. That's looking up. Hope and Sunrise are sister communities on Trinity Arm, North Kenai Peninsula. They're the traditional home of the Denina, and it had a gold rush in 1896. The Trinity Arm Gold Rush predated the Klondike Gold Rush for a few weeks in 1898. Hope City was the biggest city in Alaska. We beat Skagway for a couple of weeks. Today, the Hope Highway is an 18-mile spur off the Seward Highway. There are almost 200 residents in Hope and fewer than 10 in Sunrise. Hope is proud that many of the Gold Rush era buildings still stand. The Hope and Sunrise Historical Society was founded in 1971. At the time, there were approximately 50 Hope residents, 2 Sunrise residents, and almost as many Anchorage owners of weekend cabins. Hope was sometimes referred to as a ghost town. The society founders included Darlene Lane, Rosemary Levine, Barbara Anderson, and David and Jenna McCabe. David McCabe passed away this year. The new society started collecting artifacts for a future museum. They relied on long-time locals for information. Carolyn McClard, Bob and Carla Twait, and Linda Graham. Currently, the society has about 100 members. Hope Historic District. Hope and Sunrise Historical Society's first big accomplishment was getting the Hope Historic District placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1972. The program was quite new then. With much assistance from Dr. Ralph Buzzell, Diane Altice, myself, wrote the society publication, Historic Building Survey Report of Alaska in 1998. The report identified 120 structures in the historic district. 20 years later, house plaques were made for the 30 district structures. Recently, a Kenai Mountain, Trinity Arm National Heritage Area grant put the building survey information online on an interactive map. Sunrise City Historic Archaeological District. The last resident of Sunrise City died in 1939. Flooding following the 1964 earthquake damaged much of what was left. Starting in 1992, with the encouragement of the society and permission from property owner Dennis Samet, Dr. Ralph Puzzle map features in Sunrise's Point Comfort Cemetery, maps Sunrise City sites, and install replacement grave markers. The state identified the cemetery as heritage resource land in 1996. In that year, the National Register of Historic Places recognized the Sunrise City Historic Archaeological District. Society volunteers assisted Buzzle with much of his work. Buzzle conducted several walking tours of the historic archaeological district and has edited 2 memoirs, Memories of Old Sunrise and Gold Rush Water. Open Sunrise Historical and Mining Museum. First museum building was finished and opened in 1994. Billy Miller was the principal log builder. Ann Miller was the first volunteer host. Some years there were as many as 7 hosts, each taking a day. In 2011, a grant-funded contractor, Diane Altice, myself, managed the museum with the volunteer adult and youth help. There are now 7 public buildings. The main building, the 1904 schoolhouse, a 1960s truck shelter, 1940s Quonset hut, 3 1917 gold mine buildings, bunkhouse, blacksmith shop, and barn, plus 2 artifact sheds, and a pit saw display. There are 2 rental cabins, both from the 1930s, 4 service guard stations, and a wood shop storage building. An ice cream parlor and gold panning school operate on the grounds. Open Sunrise Historical Society Archive. The society started collecting artifacts and photographs in 1971 and cataloging them in 1998. In 2006, with an Alaska Humanities Forum grant, they started digitally cataloging on Past Perfect software. The collection has about 1,200 artifacts and 3,000 photographs. 2/3 of the collection has been cataloged. The collection is housed in the museum. Year-round, the archive answers requests from researchers. It is not uncommon here, but someone's Trinity Arm Gold Rush ancestor. Publications, signs, websites, newsletters, and programs. The Open Sunrise Historical Society, in their first year of operation, reprinted the 1910 sling map of the Kenai Peninsula from Stewart to Hope, featuring mines and roads. They've continued to encourage books on the Hope area history and sold them at their museum. A dozen 2-foot by 3-foot interpretive signs enlighten visitors on the museum grounds and Hope Main Street. The latest sign is on the local Denina. The newsletter took a break after some 15 years, but should return soon. There's a website, Facebook page. Pre-pandemic, there were 4 live programs this summer, drawing as many as 8 people each. We should return to that soon. Mission statement. The mission statement was revised this past spring. Okay. The museum preserves and interprets the history of the Trinity Gold Rush and Hope's development since. To achieve our goal, we will. And there's a list of 8 things we'll do. 1, exercise responsible stewardship of our resources. Develop and use our collection and facilities for public exhibition, tours, educational and interpretive programs, to examine Hope Sunrise history, research and publish materials to further the understanding of Hope Sunrise history, make available our archive collection for the benefit of scholars, students, and descendants, maintain and preserve the historical integrity of the museum campus building, expand our collection of Hope Sunrise artifacts and primary source materials, encourage financial contributions to support museum operation on an ongoing basis, offer visitors a welcoming, friendly, encouraging museum experience. And last slide, which we don't, oh,
She found it.
Hope and Sunrise future goals. And we're still adjusting from the pandemic. But we know that Hope with 200 people has 9 nonprofits, so recruiting museum and project volunteers is challenging. The museum has been using youth guides for 20 years, not counting 2020. It's a goal to continue to recruit enthusiastic Hope children and return to recruiting route travel groups every year. The goal is to keep museum operations stable. The society has a new president, a new museum director. This year they were both overwhelmed. Hopefully the museum can return to meeting visitor expectations. Stabilizing the museum's 8 historic cabins is a current goal, as being developed into a series of goals. Current concern. According to the calendar on the museum's website, it is open on Sunday, starting at noon to visitors. If you want to swing into Hope and see what's there. This is the end of my report, and I'll hand it back to Jen.
Thank you, Diane. I'll do it. You'll do it? I'll do it for all of them. Okay.
Hi, I'm Catherine Cassidy. I am one of the founders of the Peninsula Regional Historical Association and currently the secretary of the board. We're an all-volunteer organization. Peninsula is on the Cook Inlet coast, about 15 miles south of Kenai. Our Euro-American history has encompassed the drainage of the Peninsula River and including Tustamina Lake. Our historical association was originally founded in 1995 by a small handful of residents who wanted to preserve the vibrant history of commercial salmon fishing in this area. The first salmon cannery in South Central Alaska was built here at the mouth of the Peninsula River in 1882. This was taken some years later, by 1890. Scandinavian immigrants brought here by the cannery companies for seasonal work became the first Euro-American residents. Big game hunting began here in 1898, providing additional seasonal work. Beginning in 1920, fox farming attracted a small influx of residents. Post-World War II brought many homesteaders who discovered that fishing was a better bet than farming in South Central Alaska. Later, the oil and gas industry offered jobs and work schedules that could often accommodate commercial fishing opportunities. Peninsula has had the highest statewide ratio of commercial salmon permits per capita for some time. It's been very important to us. We began by collecting information and sponsoring public presentations. Then in 2002, we acquired our first property and our first historic structure. This building was originally an infirmary at the cannery, likely constructed between 1905 and 1910. In 1938, the territory purchased it for a schoolhouse for Peninsula, and the residents moved it several miles away from the river. The the photo of the building in white paint was when it was a schoolhouse. It was a school until '59 and was a community library for some time after that, and now it's our main museum building. Once we had property, we began acquiring endangered historic structures that turned into avalanche. You know, it carried us forward, these projects. This is a fox kitchen. It was built in 1927. It's basically a barn that included facilities for cooking fox food and a lookout tower. This was for observing foxes in their pens. That was part of the business. This 1927 photo shows the fox kitchen and the house next door under construction and the fox pens in place. Let's see, this next. This is fox farmer Abe Erickson's home, built in 1920. Abe was a Finnish immigrant who came to Kasilof as a cannery employee. The black and white photo was taken in 1933. Volunteers, led by Gary Titus, did all of the preparation and restoration work on this and our other rescued buildings. Bill Nelson, who's present here today, has been one of our diehard volunteers. Much appreciated. Another thing I just remembered today is a small grant back then from the Kenai Peninsula Historical Society allowed us to purchase a lot of tools specialized for doing log restoration work. Next. We also moved Abe's outhouse and meat cache, and they're on the museum grounds now. Next. This was a trapping cabin built prior to 1910. It was about 6 or 7 miles up the Kasilof River from the mouth. These early buildings were typically sheathed on gable ends and roofs with cannery tins. So you can see these are squares of tins. They were brought up by the cannery in flat sheets and formed into cans by the cannery workers. We did have the sheets reproduced. So these are original to the building, and these are reproductions that we had made. Cool. Next. This is the interior of that trap cabin. The builder, Victor Hall, was Finnish, and he had the same, it's a fascinating, I haven't finished the research on this, bed. He had one of these in his home too, and it's some Finnish style, which I'd like to learn more about. Next. This is a trapping cabin that is about 12 miles upriver, close to Tuscany Lake. That's Abe Erickson of the cabin we saw before. He built this trapping cabin, and it turned out to be inside the Kenai National Wildlife Refuge boundary, and it was moved by the refuge to our museum for preservation. It's made with planks that were brought in by the cannery for use in constructing their fish traps. The traps were dismantled at the end of every season, because otherwise the ice would tear them up. The cannery would salvage the pilings that they used in the traps, but not these planks. And so they were happily recycled by locals. This structure was built near the cannery by the mouth of the river around 1892. It was on state land and was succumbing to neglect and vandalism when the state finally decided to loan it to us. The black and white photo was taken in the late 1890s. And we don't know who built it originally. It was not on the land tract that the cannery owned, but it eventually came in use as the winter washman house for the cannery. Next. It was a huge undertaking. And again, all of the preparation and restoration work on these structures was accomplished by community volunteers. We did we obviously had a professional mover taking it on its ride to the museum. Next. We have a variety of displays inside. Just a wonderful building. We have a few other structures and built these sheds for displaying large artifacts. The museum grounds are always open to visitors. In the summer, we staff the museum for 3 hours a day with the cabins all opened up. We also open by appointment. So far in 2023, we've had over 800 people sign our guest book during our official open hours. Next. This site is in a different location, not at the museum. It was saved intact, is on the National Register. Victor Holm, whose trap cabin we saw earlier, built the first small cabin in 1890 and lived here for 54 years. We were gifted the property for preservation. Next. We may be just about finished. We may be just about finished acquiring and restoring structures. But we have a ton of work to do to catch up on our interpretation and digitizing vast quantities of written materials that we've accumulated and cataloging photo collections. So we're still busy and still enjoying lots of volunteer work. And thank you.
Everybody. I'm Jim Harris, president of the Kenai Historical Society. The Kenai Historical Society was organized first in 1954, but was only active for a few months, and then they reinstated in 1967. The society was formed by members of the original Kenai Homemakers Club and the Kenai Civic League, organizations that were very active in moving the small village of Kenai into its city phase. Their beginning mission was to collect and preserve the history of the city of Kenai and the Central Peninsula to ensure that we're not only preserving history of our past, but preserving, protecting the future and the knowledge of our country, of our history. We still follow this mission statement today. They were a highly active group of around 23 who met the first Sunday of every month during the winter. Their accomplishments were the Kenai Museum and Gift Shop, which was located upstairs above Fort Kenai. They also had a cookbook that they sold for $2.50 and did some awesome newsletters when time allowed. Around 1984, the Kenai Society published the book Once Upon a Kenai, which is a very popular book even today. We still have those for sale. We're into our 4th reprint on this book, and those we have available. There is one back in the back if you'd like to take a look at it. In more recent years, our accomplishment as a society continued. We follow the same mission statement. We meet during the winter months, usually every Sunday afternoon at the Kenai Visitor Center. And we usually always have a nice guest speaker, a lot of speakers who can update us more on the history of the city and the surroundings. We always hope to build our membership. We continue with the sale of our book. Newsletters when time allows. Everybody's always busy. Continue to research and collect artifacts of our local history, working for the Moose Meat John cabin there at the Visitor Center parking lot. Our new website, we've just gotten, after many years of wanting one, we finally have begun a website, but it's still a great deal of work and a work in progress. We have a scholarship program that we're able to give a scholarship to a graduating Kenai senior every year. I'm very proud of that. We lease the Civic League building, which stands right at the entrance to the old cabin park in the Old Town Kenai. Now, it's a 1954 building, all of its own, and we sublease it to a church group. This building was used as Kenai's first city hall, community center, courthouse, church, public library, school room, and storage for our first fire truck. We've implemented numerous historical projects, on the grounds at the visitor center. We have several fishing boats and, cabin or cannery related equipment. Donations for preservation of the Russian Orthodox Church. We have a donkey winch. We have some interesting artifacts sitting on the ground. So if you're back in Kenai, go back by the Kenai Visitor Center, and you will see a lot of these things we've been able to acquire. Our biggest project going on for over a decade is so far is the management of the Kenai Cabin Park in Old Town Kenai. Thanks to George and Mary Ford, and with the support of Kenai Chamber, the City of Kenai, the Historical Society, and a Erasmus grant, 5 cabins that were closed to the public and used only for storage were restored by a small group of retired men from the Unocal plant in Nikiski and moved to the current location. There's our donkey winch and one of the boats we've acquired. Russian Orthodox Church, which you probably, you took a tour to there recently. Here's the movement of our cabins. They were behind the fort. They were locked up to the public and they were moved. You can see them being moved on flatbed trucks now. Evelyn Boutley, who left in the cabin as it was being moved. This is her grandmother's cabin. It was quite a project. It took about 3 days. This cabin I thought was gonna fall apart and be toothpicks by the time it got to the park. It creaked. We have an old truck from the cannery that was used to haul fish. It was donated. I wanted a cache and we couldn't locate one, so the man built me one. This is our schoolhouse cabin, the Arness cabin. We themed it as a schoolhouse because it was once used as a schoolhouse. This is one of the Russian school desks. You can see some of the school parts of the school, 48 star flag. Oh, we have Lazo boxes. This is an old picture of Kenai. I believe it's, I don't know what year this one is, probably 1919. These are just some old buildings around in Kenai. There is.
That's Frost Jones.
Oh, is that?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I'm glad you're telling me.
That's it.
So we do have the 5 cabins. We have the Arness cabin, which you just saw some. We have the Miller cabin, which was built in, all of these cabins were early 1900s. The interesting part about the Miller cabin is it was built in the sea log and taken apart and barged to Kenai area. And you can still see the numbers on the logs that was put back together. You saw a picture of, that's her grandmother's cabin, and she decorates that cabin. We have the Sanders cabin. Swedish sailor Victor Sanders arrived in Alaska around 1921, married a native woman, and raised 13 children in this cabin, and it's a very small cabin. We have it themed because we acquired so many tools and trapping equipment and that type of thing. We just kind of themed it as a bachelor's cabin, and that may be the way it was. You can see it, well, you can't really see it, you can just see a piece of it in the corner. The person I spoke about was the Arness cabin, and this is the Sanders cabin. We don't see the the Miller cabin. The red one in the left corner is the Bell Shop, Juliusson cabin, and we use it as a museum. We collect all kinds of interesting artifacts in that one. You get donations of pictures, newspaper clippings, and copies of old photos, not just local people, but people who have moved out of the area and are always contacting us, wanting to send their treasures back to us now that they know we have a place to display them. They're so proud of this. Cabins are very popular in the summertime. We have a dozen on grounds in the summer, June through August. We're open Tuesday through Saturday for tours, noon to 5. These cabins are used oftentimes for backdrops for graduation pictures. We've had wedding pictures. Last week I had a band come over and want to make pictures using the cabins as a backdrop. Any questions? Come and visit us this summer. We'd love to have you. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. So next up is our newest member, the North Road Pioneers, and Beth Porter's gonna give us an update.
Okay, first of all, those of you who don't know me, and I think there's probably quite a few who don't. I'll tell you a little bit about my family. My grandfather moved to Alaska in about 1914. My mother was born in Alaska in 1921. I believe she was the third of 4 kids. I was born in 1946 on the south side of Kachemak Bay. And my family moved into Kenai in 1951, the first time there was a road where you could actually come to Kenai. We moved to Kenai. We wound up moving out on a homestead and what those days was called North Kenai. And about 53, 54, I was very young, I don't remember the exact date. But my family's been around Alaska a long time. I'm 3rd generation. My daughters are 4th generation. Their kids are 5th generation. And I have nephews and nieces that go down to 6th generation at least. And I don't think there's any sons yet. But anyway, a lot of family around. We've been here a long time. Back a while back, came to the conclusion that there was history written about Kenai, that once on a Kenai, yeah, that was when that was written. My mother was one of the authors in that book. She did a little piece of it. So that is part of history of Kenai. There's a lot of history societies, as you see, that have, but in the Kiski area, North Kenai, there's none. There was one started, I guess, a few years back, and it didn't go anywhere. I'm sitting there saying, you know, there's a lot of history out on the North Road in the Kiski area is being lost. My folks, original homesteaders, gone. A lot of that gone. Even my generation, a lot of my schoolmates and stuff are gone. We're losing that history. It's not being written down. It's not anywhere being accounted for. So, I'll tell you, I have a group of people who, once I started saying, you know, we need to do this, that have been with me and helped me get this thing started. I want to mention, for one, is some of you may know her as Audrey Johnson. Now, Audrey was a real fixture around Kenai and North Kenai, and was into a lot of things and was very willing to help on a lot of things. And when I first started this, I had no idea what I'm doing. I still know just a little bit, but we're getting there. But Audrey was very good at helping me get started. Somebody said, hey, you need to become a 501c3. Okay, what is that? I have no idea. Audrey got the paperwork, said, here, take this, fill it out, I'll do this with it, do that, and she was the one that put together so I could have a 501c3. She was at every meeting, she was very helpful with everything. Unfortunately, Audrey is one of those who has now passed away, and I no longer have her help, but I do have a good group of people that are helping me, and I would like to mention them here, although I don't see a lot of them here, but to mention the names was Tammy Johnson, Marcy Ware, Lance Ware, Jim Graves, who is here, and Len Niston. Those people have been very, very good with helping me try to get things going. Now, I'm gonna say that, how to go about this, the original homestead, yeah, okay. In 2020, was the first meeting that we had trying to put things together. So I had a lot of interest back in 2020, and we were starting to get going when all of a sudden COVID hit. That kind of put the brakes on everything, and we didn't do much for a while. We tried, but it was hard to get anything going. Then, near the end of that, my wife at the time, was done with cancer. That took me kind of out of the picture for a while. She passed away now 2 years ago. And that was, her name was Bonnie. Originally Bonnie Bill and then Bonnie Porter. So I wanted to mention her because she helped me a lot with getting this thing started. Okay. The group that I have now has put together this little speech for me, which I haven't even started on yet. It's here. I don't think I'm gonna get too far into 10 minutes because we don't even have a slide or anything. We don't have the equipment for all that kind of stuff yet because we're just trying to get some traction, getting this thing going. I do want to mention that the Kenai Society has been very helpful to us and is continuing to be very helpful. Thank you, June. Thank you, Sharon. Very good. Okay. What they put together is, my name's Jack Porter, president of the North Road Pioneers. No came upon that name. My sister came up with that name. Everybody seemed to like it, so we stuck with that. The North Road, commonly called North Kenai and now Nikiski, being lost and forgotten, original homesteaders move or pass away, and there's been a lot of that. I could name so many names of families that were original homesteaders that are no longer left. We've lost their history, except what maybe their friends that maybe are still around remember, or their kids if they're still around. But we want to get as much of that as possible somehow recorded. We have very little. We have been trying to obtain things, but first thing you need to obtain happens to be money. And since COVID, after COVID, things are getting real tough. Trying to get grants, much harder than it used to be before COVID. So we have one grant that we're thinking we're gonna get a part of. And that's it. Other than that, the only monies we got are what we put in out of our pockets or what we've been able to talk to get friends and neighbors into donate. That's so our finances are very bad right now. And the things that we would like to do require some money. We would like to have a property where we can put things. You know, a lot of people have things to donate, then we'd have to have that. North Road Pioneers was formed, we became a nonprofit organization and have 4 board members, and that's besides me. Well, we have hosted a community event where guests indicated an interest in learning more about the Kenai area, or the Nikiski area, I'm sorry. The primary goal is to preserve the history of Nikiski. We will capture the memories and recollections of the individuals that were original residents and businesses, video and sound recording. Now, at this point, if this grant that we're working on comes through, we will be able to purchase some video recording equipment and so forth to be able to do some of that. That individuals have let us know that they have memorabilia, things that they would donate to a museum. Well, in order to have that, you have to have property and a building and all that, and then this time now, if any of you have looked at real estate prices, it has gone out of sight, and it's gonna take quite a bit for us to ever be able to obtain that unless we get some real interested people to donate things, donate property, donate buildings, whatever. I'm hoping some of that. Meanwhile, we are gonna go ahead and so one way or another start getting people's stories, either written or go interview and get them recorded or whatever is necessary there. We are excited and look forward to the future when these stories will be available for future generations and understand the growth of the North Road. Now, some of the things that, one of the things that I like to talk about was mentioned by, I think June had a picture of it on there, is Blazo boxes. How many of you know what a Blazo box is? Quite a few of them. Okay. Blazo boxes were a big, big part of all of the homesteaders out north, any of them that I went to. In our house, you take a Blazo box and you set it down on with the top down. And it's just about the right height for kids to sit on. You stand it up on end, it's just about the right height for an adult to sit on. You take two of them and set them down on their side, and then another one on top of that, put a board, an old door, or whatever on top, and you got a table. You take it and you stack them on the side like this, and they become kitchen cabinets. Our kitchen cabinets went, there were 9 of us kids, so kitchen cabinets went all the way around, and they were about this high, all Blazo boxes. You just stack them up, and then maybe put some kind of a curtain in front of them to keep the dust from getting in there, and you had kitchen cabinets. That was a big thing. I have one Blazo box now. I would like to collect some of those and put them on display. Anyway, I'm just going down to rabbit trail. Let's see, in order to preserve the history, it is necessary to obtain written, verbal, and video stories. The history would include, this is what we would like, is past native histories, homestead days, oil discoveries. Oil was a big part of the history area. What happens today is tomorrow's history. Say something about that. The best time to record history is while it's happening. Okay, while it's freshest. Now, I mentioned there were 9 of us kids. 9 of us all lived together. We all experienced the same thing. And I bring up something that happened a few years back. And guess what? I'm the only one of the 9 that remembers correctly exactly that. That just points out that the best time to record history of today is today. Definitely not past tomorrow, because things start slipping away. So to get this done, we need to make it happen now. Okay. In order to obtain the most complete history, it is necessary to obtain it as soon as possible. The history and stories of those still with us and the pioneers who are remembered by those of us still here. Any history not recorded today will be lost tomorrow. And a little something that I read quite a while ago is this: that history is not what happened. It is what was written about. So if we want history to be accurate, we have to record it while it's happening or soon after, before the details get lost, and then history is no longer as accurate as it could. Let's see, somewhere here. Ultimate goal of the North Road Pioneers is to obtain a location for permanent storage and a place to display the history and artifacts of time gone by. Okay, I read this, the mission statement without letting you know it was the mission statement, and that is the one that says, in order to preserve the history of Nikiski, AKA the North Road, it is necessary to obtain written, verbal, audio stories of time gone by. The history collected will include fascinating histories, homestead days, oil discoveries, and what happens today is tomorrow's history. The best time to record history as it is happening, while in memory is precious. That is the mission statement at this time.
1 minute.
All right, well, that's pretty good. I didn't think I'd go 10 minutes. Actually, done right there. And I just one more time want to say thank you to June and the Kenai Historical Society for their help.
Yeah. And the North Road Pioneers has a great website with oral history on it, so check it out. Colleen Kelly is gonna do the Resurrection Day Historical Society. Sure.
Okay, time for the 7th inning stretch. Stand up. Do some twists. Get some oxygen in those lungs. Well, good to see everyone. You're all awake. You've had enough coffee, cookies, or breads. I'm gonna start the report on the Resurrection Bay Historical Society with a little look past to its history, so you know where we're coming from. I've actually been a member for more than 20 years and a volunteer. We are a volunteer organization after all. The seed for our organization was planted by a group that gathered in Mildred Kirkpatrick's house in 1961 to talk about the idea of preserving local history. And a little over a year later, they finally were able to get a meeting place in the courtroom of the federal building. And on July 13th, 1962, they officially organized a local historical society. They elected the local banker, Seeley Hall, as president. And I know a few of you in here know who the vice president, or you're familiar with her, is Pat Williams. A very long time resident of Seward and a dear friend of mine. She taught me so much about Seward history. And unfortunately, when she passed away in 2014, it was like, oh man, what am I gonna do? She had lived to be 104, almost 105 years old. So she was our vice president of that first organization. And according to, sorry, I have to do the slide on slide 3. That was the federal building. They met on the 2nd floor. And according to those 1962 meeting minutes, which you can see here, the very important matter of an appropriate name was discussed, with the conclusion reached and voted unanimously as Resurrection Bay Historical Society. And of course, that's a mouthful, so we shorten it up to RBHS. Charter member Pat Williams said the group continued to meet in the federal building until the fateful day of the 1964 earthquake, at which time the building was condemned and eventually razed. The irony of the situation was that the earthquake provided a real urgency to actually get a museum building. With so many people living in town, there was a fear that much of the town's history would be lost as many residents packed up to leave. According to Pat, she said members made an effort to secure objects and photos. Next slide. After formally incorporated in 1965 as RBHS, the group began receiving items, including a major donation of Alaska artifacts, ivory, and baskets from Selma McDonald, who's pictured here along with her husband. He was the Alaska Steamship Company agent starting in 1915 in Seward. And so he had collected many things over his years as a steamship agent. Another significant donation was from the Carl Orlander estate, a local jeweler who died in 1965. So those items really were an important part of our first museum. Slide 5. RBHS now needed a place to display and store its ever-growing collection. Pat Williams recalled in her memoir,
At the new city hall, they gave us a place in the empty basement to meet. And here's the new city hall in 1865. There was no heat, so we wore our coats and mittens to the meeting. I'll never forget those icy cold floors. The group had wanted the Al Peel House, which was downtown, the corner of Second and Railway. That's where they wanted to put the museum. But a number of stumbling blocks prevented that from happening. Pat Williams said, in the end, the fire department set the Peel House ablaze in a controlled burn. So we began storing our items in the city hall basement and created a museum in that space with its gold floors. And a little side note about the Peel House. Of course, Al Peel and his wife Lydia Griffins had lived there for a number of decades, so that's how it was known by that name. And another side note, Lydia Griffiths was actually a madam. In 1915, the line and Seward had a number of cribs that she controlled. But anyway, I don't think people really focused on that in 1965. But the federal government, with their urban renewal, actually decided the building needed to be taken down. But the building should have been properly known as the Mary Lowell House. Our community started in 1903. Mary Lowell and her family had lived there for 2 decades when the Lane brothers and the Alaska Central Railway were looking for a town to start their Alaska Central Railway. And they approached her and she sold her homestead to them for $4,000. She built this beautiful 2-story house. And unfortunately, in 1906, she passed away. And somehow or another, Al Peel and his wife got that house, which sadly we don't have as our museum. Next slide. The group hit, the Seward Museum officially opened its doors on April 29, 1966, as I mentioned, in the City Hall basement. Then, 23 years later, we moved to this building that you see here. It was the former post office, and that's on 3rd and Jefferson. So our VHS president and longtime volunteer back in 1989 retired from teaching, Lee Pileski, a beloved member of our organization. And he took a very active role at that point in running the museum at this location here. Next slide. It didn't take long for exhibits to take shape at the new location. Donations kept coming in, objects, photographs, and archives. Next slide. As the community marked its 100th year of founding back in 2003, the Historical Society agreed to support and participate in this great effort to combine the city library and museum. It took about 10 years to get to that goal, but you can see here in 2012, in December, we all met for the last time in that 3rd Avenue location. And the next month, in January of 2013, the new building was dedicated. Next slide, please. So with this new building came an agreement whereby the city took over operations of the museum, provided us with a full-time curator. Lucky for us, because Lee decided at that time he was gonna really retire as a volunteer. But he wasn't able to do that. He continued working for our organization. We continue our mission of collecting, preserving, and making accessible materials pertaining to our local history. Next slide. Of course, President Sue McClure is unable to be here today, but here's the annual report that she provided. Our VHS has had an active year. During fall, spring season, we host monthly historical presentations, and they were very well attended. We hosted the annual Christmas open house in December, of course, complete with decorations, refreshments, and of course, Sue, our president, plays the pump organ, one of our 2 organs on exhibit. We are listing and refining our goals and objectives periodically. So at our monthly meetings, we encourage new members to give input and also to volunteer, to actively participate. If you have ideas, you need to execute. Next slide. On June 21st, we hosted the annual Solstice Cemetery Tour led by Lee Pileski, who's pictured here. And we sadly lost him in August. The tradition is going to continue next June with President Sue McClure, who's pictured at left there, leading the tour. Our volunteers keep the museum open for tourists on Sundays all summer. Many came and enjoyed not only the museum, but the earthquake movies and the Iditarod movies that we show every Sunday afternoon during the summer. Founders Day, August 26th, was celebrated in the traditional manner. That's to mark the arrival of the landing party and the start of the Alaska Railroad in 1903. At this event, Coffee Conversation, a slideshow this year that highlighted the 100th anniversary of the Federal Alaska Railroad. And we had a visiting delegation of Japanese sister city members from Obihiro, who are pictured here, table. And of course, punk music by Sue. Next slide. Our collections and exhibits committees have been busy all year. They developed a new founders exhibit pictured here, and they processed donations and answered all sorts of historical inquiries. Now these last few slides don't really need a narration. They're our tribute to Lee Pulaski.
Dale Bagley put this slideshow together. I'm just the stand-in while he's on vacay. Slide. Our board of directors, one, as you can see, I'm the treasurer for Soldotna Historical Society and KPHA, happy to do both. Okay, do them all at the same time. Oh, sorry. Maria Dixon is not listed on there. She is our volunteer coordinator extraordinaire. Without her, I mean, she is a follow-through kind of gal, so I wanted to make sure she was listed on there. Always could use more board members, always could, as every society, board members, membership, volunteers. Next slide, please. Sources of funding. We are we're fortunate to be within the city of Soldotna. They are very supportive in the 5,000 yearly grant, as you can see. Dale DeLifka, the video that we'll show at the end, we'll talk about Major Chansky and how fortunate we are to have that funding as well. When you talk about money and projects and rebuilding things, as you can read, contributions from visitors, membership. You know, a couple of years ago, we went to the lifetime membership. So you'd see a whole bunch of members, maybe it'd be 60 members, but then when you do lifetime memberships, that drops. And so we've certainly seen the drop, which is expected. Next slide. Past interpretive signs, I have told everybody about. They're really kind of cool. They're very important. You can visit them any time of day. You can read that, honoring somebody and giving them a lifetime membership. A lot of this stuff like videotaping homesteaders, all this stuff needs to really be on our website. So finding that person that does that. The social media, the Facebook that Facebook page has really been fun, and I think it's a go-to place for people if they do the Facebook. Next slide. Our goals. Okay, everybody heard about our roof collapse over our dory and double ender. We are on the city of Soldotna grounds, which means we have to follow the city's rules. It came with quite a price tag to replace that roof, chunk of change, that's for sure. Remember the shovel lower roofs, which you probably all did. We keep talking about the strategic planning meeting, which when we talk about it, but it's expensive to have. And is it really necessary? That's my vote. But anyway, it keeps going because it has stalled a lot of our moving forward, like the collections committee, because we've had heated discussions of, well, it's a homestead museum. Do you have the focus being only these years or these years? Well, then there wouldn't be anything. There'd be very little at the museum. And as you all know, visitors come to Alaska because Alaska's cool. It's neat. We're still celebrities when we go out, right? And they want to know about the history of the earthquake or the Alaska flag or the, Seward's Folly. They want to know all about, they want to see all the critters. So, my vote is to keep it just like it is. But anyway, it's battles. The maintenance, you know, we need a maintenance coordinator for sure, somebody that's really gonna keep an eye on that. Dick Rieger used to do that. It was very important to him. And we're very fortunate in our location by Centennial Park, which we are open tomorrow from noon to 2. Anybody has never been there. And that's another thing, you know, the people that we live in this area, even though we're on, there's a Soldotna Homestead Museum, I've never seen that. Oh, it's those old buildings by the ball fields. Next slide, please. I won't touch on this because Dale Galifka in his video, he talks about Major Chance. We really wanted to, the Soldotna Historical Society would not be there. Francis Damon also a huge part of that, one of the many people that have been part of that, founder of the museum, the funding that we received from her, donated 212,000. So like I said, the video follows. Thank you again, and I do want to give a shout out. Sorry, Carol Brookman. She has been our amazing docent for years and years and years, is moving to Anchorage. Thank you. If you ever, there's so much information packed in her head about Alaska history, Soldotna history, she lived it, right? And man, nobody, I mean, the way she tells it with her Carol sense of humor. Thank you.
I met May Sachansky in 1975. She was married to Ed Sachansky. They were one of the most interesting couples I ever met. They owned a homestead on the Kenai River, and Ed was a World War II veteran. He was from Ohio. He was actually decorated. Came to Soldotna area and got the homestead in the 47-48 period. Interesting, May called herself a mail order bride. I'm not sure what that meant, but she did it in fun. She was an orphan, and one of the most fascinating people that I ever met, in the sense that she worked for General MacArthur in his secretary pool, and when he went into Tokyo, she went in with him. She was feisty. She rode the trains in Japan right after the war. And then as years went by, I was very involved in the development of their homestead. I did a lot of real estate contracts, worked with the surveyors, and spent many wonderful hours at their homestead in their little house. I'm well aware of the homestead cabin, which Ed was not a builder, and it left a lot to be desired in that regard. But it became his studio. He was a carver, and I would go out and visit with him. He liked that because May was a chatterbox. Now, where she became involved, she was a brilliant lady, and she, I think, being an orphan, added a lot to who she became. She was a big believer in education, and again, I think because her education made her who she was, and she would always use the word, I want to, it's the way to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. She also spent a lot of time telling me about history, and that if you didn't understand history, you would just continue to repeat the mistakes. And she did it in the context of the war, World War I, World War II. And so, again, in that regard, she was very impressive to me. That education was the key to making yourself better, but history was really critical. And I think the museum, the Slycock School, all of those things came together for her. And so what I really enjoyed was obviously the homestead on the river was valuable. They retained me to help set up the funds with the city of Soldotna. She loved Soldotna, and many foundations wanted to sponsor that, and there was no way that anyone was going to protect her money than the city of Soldotna. So we set up, it had two parts to it. One was the education, which the scholarship fund continues today. It has done exactly what May wanted to have happen. It has changed so many lives. I've watched that program. I have cards and letters and notes of people thanking the city of Soldotna via May Sachansky for what it did for them. She was very comical in one regard. We were at a city council one night and we were setting this all up, and you never knew what May Sachansky was going to do. And she made it very clear that this scholarship fund was not for the hoity-toity valedictorians and salutatorians. This was for the underdog. And she specifically mentioned the children of single-parent moms. The very critical part of getting the museum set up, getting the land. And she was somewhat cunning in the sense that, well, I'm going to give you this money. And I give her a lot of credit for getting the land. She almost shamed the city council into give them the property. It was fun to watch how she did that. And they would always grin and say, well, May got us again. I would take kids who got the scholarship. You know, she was, it was very rewarding to her. And then I would walk the grounds with her where the museum is now, her vision and her dreams. And so having worked there this summer, that brought back a lot of memories of May Sachansky. Just her dreams have really come true.